Let's play a game of travel battles, but this time I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I might have hinted about this in my previous videos, but this one is going to be played in the Valor and Fortitude rules. I have a modified version of the Valor and Fortitude rule set that plays in this 8mm scale. If you're interested in this, just drop me a line at number6minis@gmail.com and I'll send you a free copy. So while Valour and Fortitude is designed for 28mm, you can play it in 8mm first by dividing all distances by 4, then rounding it up, and then after that changing everything that says inches to say centimeters, and then playing the entire game with a centimeter measuring tape. For the different types of formations in the game, you can use markers with different colors to denote the different formation types. You can do this a myriad of ways, but I recommend using pipe cleaners with different colors like this. Simply cut them out into small little strips like this, and these will slot right on top of the miniatures unobtrusively. For lost markers, I bought these tiny dice in blue and in red for the British and French. Now let's take a look at the armies. We'll first start with the British. I'm playing this with 3 brigades per side, and for the British 1st Brigade, it's going to be full of elite troops as well as all the cannons. While the 2nd Brigade consists of all the regular line infantry, and the British cavalry has its own brigade. Here is the British Army list. You can pause the video to take a closer look. It is worth about 374 points. Now let's take a look at the French army. Now their doctrine is going to be much more different than the British. They're going to have one large brigade of nothing but infantry, and then 2 small cavalry brigades, one with heavy cavalry, and then the second one a faster moving light cavalry hussars, all with horse artillery. Here is the French list. Notice that I upgraded the old guard shooting by 1 point each, and I also am bringing horse artillery instead of regular artillery. The additional 2 brigade commanders are going to be used as commanders-in-chief, and I denote them with some purple pipe cleaners. For this battle report, I will be setting up a classic set-piece battle for Valor and Fortitude. These are the rules over here from the Valor and Fortitude website. But of course, this is done with travel battles, so I'm going to be using the travel battle setup system for the terrain board. I roll a dice for the French, and whatever it rolls, I'm going to put that edge facing the French, and then do the same thing for the British afterwards, roll a dice for them, and then place whatever number is at the bottom of the board facing the British. And then as far as the game limit, I decided that 6 rounds is more than enough of brutal Napoleonic action. Next is the attacker-defender roll. I roll 2 dice, 1 for the British and 1 for the French. The British roll higher and become attackers, while the French are defenders. Next, the scenario calls for 4 objective markers to be laid down, starting with the defender first, and then alternating until all 4 are set up. And for this, I found cutting up some blue tape into 4 small squares works really well. I place 1 square over here in this farmhouse, and then the British place 1 in the woods here. The French next put an objective on top of the hill, and the British on this farmhouse here. Next, the armies are deployed, and this board is really nice because the first 2 squares are exactly the deployment zone in centimeter scale. The French start by deploying their large infantry brigade right in the center first, establishing a presence in the center and holding on to the objective. Next, the British counter with the same move, putting their main infantry unit, their line infantry, right in the center to counter what the French are doing. The French next place their heavy cavalry brigade on the left flank, while the British artillery and elite brigade set up on the British left flank. The trees in front of them offer great cover and will allow them to really hold this objective well. The French then deploy their light cavalry onto the right flank, allowing this brigade to easily either defend or charge up the right flank. The last deployment is the British cavalry brigade. Noticing that there's a nice weak spot on the French left flank, they place all their models here. Lastly, the commanders-in-chiefs of both armies get placed in their locations on the battlefield. Next, the British roll for the first turn and get a 4+, which means they get to choose. And the British opt to go first to get a jump on the French early in the game. Now that everything is set up, it is time to start the game, starting with turn 1. The British get to act first, So the first thing they're going to do is play the fate phase. Pulling out a card from the deck, the British get a queen, which is defensive fire, giving the British an additional attack if the French were to attack them in melee. Let's go to the British fire phase. Unfortunately, at this point in the game, nothing is within range. Next to the British action phase, the Commander-in-Chief being close to the center brigade allows them to automatically activate. They immediately move up the road, getting closer to this farmhouse right here, and also defending the center area, getting ready for an attack. And then the frontmost infantry units are going to be getting a line order, getting them ready to receive whatever the French will throw at them. The British commander then sends orders to the left flank with an activation roll, and it succeeds. The elite infantry immediately occupy the tree line and everything else sets up around them. Time to activate the British right flank, and an activation roll ends up being successful. Brigade is issued a double order, giving them double the movement speed, so from 5 centimeters to 10, surging up the right flank. This positions them perfectly to challenge either the French left or center. The final move is for the British Commander-in-Chief to move into a more favorable position. Onward with French turn 1. For the fate phase, the French draw an 8 from the deck. This is inspiration, allowing either a Valour or a Fortitude roll to immediately pass. This is a really good card to keep handy. Nothing is in range for the fire phase, so moving on to the action phase. The French army commander provides instant activation for the center brigade, and immediately the right two most battalions change to march order to give them enough speed to get all the way to the farmhouse on the right, effectively claiming that objective. While the rest of the brigade remains in the center and starts forming up into line formation. The French infantry matching the moves of the British, getting ready for a showdown in the center. Time to activate the cavalry on the French left flank. Roll is successful and they activate. The French heavy cavalry cautiously advance up the road, trying to avoid a British charge. The French right flank rolls for activation and barely makes it. The light cavalry on the right flank start in march order and in open formation, allowing them to surge up the right flank down the road. All the while aware of this British gun on the hill, making sure to move out of its front arc to prevent getting shot at. Onward to turn 2, with both armies still jockeying for position. The British go first, and the first thing they do is draw a fate card, and this time they draw a king, which is a nice strong card. It adds +1 fire value to one infantry brigade. This will come in handy. With the French intentionally staying out of zones of fire, there is nothing to shoot in the fire phase. So it's onward to the British action phase. The infantry brigade in the center automatically activates, being that close to the commander-in-chief, and it decides to move up and challenge the French infantry right in the center. Now moving to the British left flank, the activation roll is successful. The 95th Rifles move up the left flank and try to get into a better position while the gun reorients itself. The cannon on the right, however, is a little bit detached and also out of position, so I'm going to try to move it over here to support the infantry advance. The British roll for a messenger for that artillery piece, and it passes. The artillery limbers up and starts moving to its new position. The brigade commander then moves into a better position in order to continue giving orders to the artillery crew. The British right flank attempts to activate, and it is also successful. Too far to charge the French cavalry, and facing the French artillery, the brigade commander decides to focus on the center. The British commander barks his orders, and all the cavalry start doing an oblique to the left, all the while being cognizant of the French muskets and artillery. Finally, the British Army commander moves into a more central position to support both brigades. Next is French turn 2, starting with the fate phase. For fate, they draw a jack, which is Le Grognard, which makes a unit a veteran unit if it ever suffers one or more losses. Note that you can only play this during the fate phase. With the British taking careful steps to stay out of range, the fire phase again remains a non-event. Onward to the action phase. The French commander notices the sudden change in the British strategy, now with cavalry threatening the center. With an automatic activation, the French center suddenly changes their formation to square to defend against a sudden cavalry attack, bracing themselves for impact. In order to change formations for these two battalions on the extreme right, the commander is going to have to send a messenger. For the French battalion on the left, the messenger role is successful. And for the battalion on the right, the message is delivered as well. They get out of their vulnerable march column formation and get into square. Time to activate the French light cavalry on the right flank, and the roll is successful. Their brigade commander gives immediate orders to shed their march formation and switch to open order since they are light cavalry and are able to do so. Being in open order keeps them nimble and minimizes casualties, but it takes away a little bit of melee punch. Onward to the French left flank, they roll for activation and barely make it. The French heavy cavalry are just outside of charging range, but they get as close as possible to harass the British. With both armies within engagement distance, turn 3 is about to get exciting. Starting with the British, they begin their fate phase by drawing a jack. And this card is called Scum of the Earth. In melee against British infantry, this degrades the enemy valor roll by 1. In the fire phase, all British guns were either out of range or do not have line of sight, so nothing happens. In the action phase, the British use their automatic activation to double down on the center and continue applying pressure here with their cavalry. Unwilling to charge the French squares, they simply position themselves in the center of the battlefield, ready to threaten the right-hand side of the infantry line and avoiding a charge from the French heavy cavalry coming down on their right. Next, the British attempt to activate their center infantry brigade, and they are able to do so. Brigade commander barks orders, and all the troops start surging up. The ones at the very front change to square formation to deny the cavalry a charge. The British attempt to activate the left flank, but unfortunately this time it failed. The British Army commander follows the center of his formations to provide orders. French turn 3 starts with the fate phase, and this time they draw an ace. This card is called All Out Attack. Any unit within 3 centimeters of the brigade leader gains +1 to melee. Moving on to the fire phase, things are finally within shooting range. The first unit to open fire is this horse artillery on the right flank. It has 2 targets, but this is the closest one. This unit has a fire value of 1, and it's great because as horse artillery, it is able to fire at full effect, limber, move, and unlimber all in one turn. The French horse artillery fires and finds its mark. Over here, the French muskets open up on these cavalry, but using skirmishers instead of full effect fire. This increases the range but reduces firepower. The line infantry fire value of 4 is reduced to 2, but there is another unit skirmishing next to it that is available for fire support, adding 1 dice to the 2, making it 3 total. And 2 rolls of 4 or more result in 2 hits. On the French left flank, this horse artillery is able to open up, but only able to hit this one target over here that's in square. This horse artillery similarly has a fire value of 1, however, its target is partially obstructed, which usually halves the value, but it's already at 1, so you can't really reduce it any further than that. Furthermore, anything that adds to it is added on top of it after it's halved, and since the target is in square, it is considered a dense target. It ends up being 2 dice. A 4+ is needed to hit, and 1 hit is scored. And the British battalion takes 1 loss. Next is the French action phase. The French army commander is commanding the left flank and orders the brigade on the leftmost side to make a bold move, to charge the British squares in front of them. Sounding the charge, the brigade attacks the tightly packed and disciplined British square, and the horse artillery limbering, moving, and unlimbering into a more favorable position. An aide-de-camp is sent to the right flank to give them orders, and it was successful. Feeling bold, the French Hussar Brigade also charges the cavalry in front of them, with one squadron attacking and another providing brigade support, while the horse artillery gets closer to the fray, setting up for canister fire. The Center French Brigade tries to activate and is successful. The brigade is already in a good position, but this one battalion over here is exposed, being in line formation facing a cavalry charge, so a messenger test goes out since it's a little bit farther away, and it succeeds. The French battalion changes from line to square in order to face the possible cavalry charge. Next is melee. First, the French heavy cavalry on the left flank make contact with both British squares. Only a 6 will be successful, and the first roll for the cavalry on the left ends up being a 4. The squadron retreats, but without taking any losses. The squadron on the right attacks the square, but is less successful with a roll of a 3, which means it retreats, but it takes 1 loss while retreating. Moving on to the fight on the French right flank. This attacking Hussar squadron has one squadron in brigade support and also a cannon providing canister fire. With the Hussars being in open order, their regular melee value of 4 gets reduced to 3. However, it gets 1 additional dice for brigade support and 2 additional dice for canister fire. Also, the French unit has 0 losses, which means it gains an additional +1 to hit in melee, so anything that is 3+ will be a hit. With the dice total at 6, the French roll and come up with a great result: 5 hits and 1 miss. The British, who are also Hussars, hit back. And just like their French counterparts, they are keeping open order, which reduces their melee value from 4 to 3. A nearby squadron gives them an additional dice for brigade support. With no losses, 3+ will hit and they score 2 hits. The French Hussars take 2 losses, but since they're victorious, they do not need a Valour test. However, the British took 2 losses above their tenacity of 3, and they roll and fail one of them, which means the unit routs. The British Hussars scatter across the battlefield, no longer an effective combat unit. With the unit routing, the British Cavalry Brigade needs to take a fortitude test. It passes and they hold steady. Next comes turn 4. The British go first, starting with their Fate phase. And drawing from their deck, they get the 9 card, which is Surprise Attack, allowing a unit to take a move before attempting an assault. Moving on to the British Fire phase. Starting out on the British right flank, there's this Hussar unit over here, and British Hussars are equipped with carbines, which allows the cavalry unit to get 1 shot off at 3 centimeters. Their carbines would have hit on a 4+, but unfortunately it fails. With the French cavalry failing their charge, they stand right in front of the British infantry that is ready to open fire on them. The unit is in square, so I have to halve its attack value from 3 down to 1, but I'm going to add 2 more, 1 for brigade support and 1 for fire support, all from brigade units close by. For a total of 3 dice, the roll comes up with 2 hits. The British play the Fate card King, which is perfect volleys, giving 1 additional attack dice. The additional roll ends up being a hit for a total of 3 losses. They take a total of 4 losses, but these are heavy French cavalry, big brave men with a tenacity of 4. They are shaken, but they don't rout. Onward to the action phase, where the British use their free activation to activate the cavalry on the very right hand side. They engage the French cavalry right in the center, resulting in a huge cavalry battle right in the middle of the field. The army general issues orders to the infantry right in the center, and they start moving up. They back up the charging cavalry and get ready to consolidate their position in the center of the battlefield. Orders begin to reach the British left flank, and they start taking action. Eager to get stuck in, the guard unit within the tree line jumps out and into action. The 95th Rifles are not within 3 centimeters of the brigade commander, however, they are considered light infantry, which gives it a +2 for messenger tests. They need 2+, and they barely get it. The riflemen move forward into engagement distance. The British guns also need a messenger test, but they fail, so they basically stand there and do nothing. The brigade commander moves over to the left to get better command and control of the two units there. It's time for some serious fighting in the melee phase. The British have two heavy dragoon units both engaged in melee and also one hussar providing brigade support. The heavy dragoons are a hard-hitting cavalry unit with 6 melee. Add 2 dice for the other heavy dragoon unit and 1 dice for brigade support brings the dice total up to 9. And on a 3+ to hit for fresh units, all but 1 hit. On the other side, the French have 1 hussar engaged with 1 in brigade support and 1 artillery supporting with canister. Hussars have an attack of 4, but they are in open order, so they only get 3 dice, but they do get 1 for brigade support and then 2 more for canister fire. The French roll and get 5 hits, which is great, but not enough to win the combat. The British are shaken, but they don't have to take a valor test because they won. The French cavalry, however, already has 2 losses and took 8 more losses. They have to roll 7 dice and it was just too much, and they failed the roll. The rout causes a French fortitude roll of a 4+ to pass, and a few sharp orders keeps the brigade intact. The French get to strike back in their own turn 4. Starting with the fate phase, they draw a 9. This is surprise attack, which allows 1 free move before an assault. In the fire phase, the French horse artillery on the left flank notices an open British hussar unit that is within range. The horse artillery has a fire value of 1, but it gets another +1 for enfilade fire shooting to the side of the hussars. With a 4+ to hit, 1 loss is inflicted. It takes the hussars up to its tenacity of 3, which means it's shaken. Now for the French horse artillery on the right flank, these 2 units here are close but not engaged, which means it can shoot at this British unit here. This is well within canister range, so it becomes 1 + 2 dice and the roll comes up with 1 hit. And the British heavy dragoon takes 1 loss. The French infantry in the center also home in on this 1 wounded hussar squadron, with 2 battalions rolling 1 dice each, +1 for brigade support, for a total of 3 dice. All 3 hit, pushing the hussar 3 losses above its tenacity value. Now most units would have to take 3 valor tests, however these hussars are like cavalry. And in open order, all losses from fire are halved, rounded down. So instead of 3 dice, the British hussars only need to roll 1. And when they roll it, they get a successful valor test. Now it's time for the French action phase. The automatic activation is on the large infantry brigade in the center. They are ordered to fall back to deny the cavalry charge and to reinforce the objective. Next, the cavalry on the French left flank activates successfully, and the French brigade commander orders his cavalry away from the range of the muskets and opted for the road on their left-hand side, giving them a little bit more maneuverability in the turns ahead. Suddenly noticing an opening on the British right, the commander orders everybody to go into march formation. Orders were then sent out to the French right flank and were received successfully. The surviving French hussars immediately countercharged, and the horse artillery relocated for support but out of harm's way. In the melee phase, the French hussars engaged the British heavy cavalry with canister support in the background. The hussars start with 4 for melee, but take away 1 from open order, and add 2 more back for canister support. The roll, however, ended up dismal with only 2 hits. The British heavy cavalry, on the other hand, had 6 melee dice plus 1 for brigade support, but also just came up with just 3 hits. With the British winning and the French going 3 over its tenacity, it has to roll 3 dice and amazingly passes all 3. But any cavalry losing a cavalry fight is required to retreat, and the French do here. Onward to the final 2 turns of the game, beginning with turn 5. Starting with the fate phase for the British, they draw a 10 from the deck, which is capture. It allows them to play the card on 1 enemy-controlled objective, and at the end of the game, it counts as 2 instead of 1. This is an easy choice because the French right flank is much more lightly defended. Starting out the British fire phase, the 95th Rifles on the left flank home in on the wounded hussar, unit right here, and it is only within the 5 cm range if it uses skirmishers, which halves its fire value to just 2. The 95th Rifles roll and get 2 solid hits. The French Hussars, being in open order, cut their losses by half due to fire, and their 1 Valour roll again succeeds. Right in the center of the British line, this artillery piece is able to see through a small opening in the crowd, homing in on this French square. The field artillery has a fire value of 1, however they're shooting at a dense target, which gives them an additional attack dice. The roll comes up with 2 hits, ravaging the French line. The British squares on the right flank send out some skirmishers to engage the French horse artillery on the hill. Only 1 British battalion is in range, and since it's in square, fire value is reduced to 1. The muskets roar but score a 1, however British have discipline which allows re-rolls of 1. The roll is repeated and it's also a miss. The British start activating units in their action phase, starting with their cavalry brigade. They press the charge in the center, sensing that the French are weakened, and put the entire force of their horses to bear. They charged the horse artillery as well as the surviving hussar unit. However, soon after, tragedy struck. The messenger got killed on its way to the other 2 brigades, and both of them stood still in confusion. Nevertheless, the British cavalry pressed their attack. The British heavy dragoons attacked the horse artillery with 6 dice plus 1 for brigade support. The British do have losses, so they hit on the 4+, and they land 4 hits. The French horse artillery are overwhelmed. With only 2 melee dice, they roll and score no hits at all. And since artillery automatically rout when they lose melee, the French artillery crew make a run for it. British cavalry are headstrong. If their enemy retreats or routs, they're able to engage another visible enemy immediately and start another fight. The heavy dragoons continue their charge into the French hussars. The second attack with headstrong does reduce the melee value by 1, so now it's 5 dice. But they get melee support from another unit that's in contact for an additional 2 dice. But even with 7 dice, the British only score 2 hits. The French hussars are in open order, so they only get 3 attack dice, but they suffer a -1 2-hit modifier because they're shaken. The French hit back but score just 1 hit. The French take 2 losses over their tenacity, so they have to roll 2 Valour dice, and they succeed. I should note that I forgot to issue a retreat over here, but later on in the game, it really didn't matter. Because the French artillery routed, it had to take a fortitude test. The test is taken, and unfortunately, the French fail. However, the French commander did have the 8 card in his deck, which is inspiration, and this nullified the failed fortitude roll. Leading by example, the brigade commander steadies his brigade. It is turn 5 for the French, and they're ready for some payback. The French draw fate card number 5, which is stubborn. When a unit makes an action, before it does, it can remove 1 loss marker. The French cavalry on the right flank could use some help, so the general uses Jack, which is Le Renard, increasing this hussar unit's melee and tenacity by 1 each. In the fire phase, the French squares continue shooting at this 1 British hussar unit. The French square's fire value gets half to 2 attack dice, but it gains 2 more from 2 supporting units next to him. The French roll and come up with 2 hits. The British hussars are already shaken, so they have to take 2 Valour rolls. Open order reduces it to 1 dice, but it still fails. The British hussars scatter under fire. The French artillery on the left flank continue bombarding the British squares. There's 1 fire dice, but adding another for dense target brings it up to 2. The result is 1 loss on the British square. The routed hussars trigger a British fortitude test, and unfortunately, they fail. The British brigade wavers, and any unit within 1 centimeter of the enemy that's shaken immediately rout, and unshaken units within 1 centimeter take 1 loss. But more importantly, the British suffer a defeat, giving the advantage to the French. Moving on to the French action phase, the army general uses his automatic activation on the infantry unit right in the center. They all change their formation from square to line and move up to pose more of a threat in the center. The French general sends orders to his right flank and they successfully activate. The French play Fate card 5, which is stubborn, allowing one loss to be removed from a unit before it makes its move. Choosing the Hussars on the right flank, they remove one loss marker to be down to just 2. The Hussars then play Fate card 9, which is surprise attack, allowing them to move before assaulting, effectively moving for 10 centimeters. These British 95th Rifles are within 10 centimeters and the front arc of the Hussars. They chose this target and initiate their charge. The French send another messenger to their left flank and successfully activate that as well. The French cavalry commander immediately orders a double. All the units race down the freeway and then on to the farmhouse, threatening the objective there. The horse artillery limbers, moves, and unlimbers into canister range. Lastly, the French army general moves up the field to maintain command and control. The violence continues in the French melee phase, with the Hussars bringing their renewed energy against the 95th Rifles. They play the Ace Fate card, which is all-out attack, giving them an additional melee dice. They were upgraded to Le Gonard, which gives them 5 attack dice but reduced to 4 because of open order, but adding 1 back because of all-out attack. They roll and land 3 hits. The British counter with a Fate card of their own using defensive fire, adding 1 to the melee value of the 95th Rifles, giving them a total of 4 dice. They score 3 hits, but since this is the French phase, the French win the combat. French Hussars hit their tenacity value of 4 but do not roll for Valor, but the 95th Rifles lost to cavalry and rout from the field. This forces the British Brigade to take a fortitude test, but they do succeed. It all comes down to the final turn, turn 6, starting with the British. The British draw a 5 from the Fate deck, which we know from the previous turns as stubborn. The British fire phase begins with the 2 squares opening fire in skirmish against the French artillery. That will allow these battalions to shoot and still move later in the turn. With half the fire dice plus 1 for fire support, they roll 2 dice and get 1 hit. Elite British Guard within the tree line are able to hit this French Hussars using their skirmishers. This halves their fire value and rounds it down to 1, which they roll and get a hit anyway. They take 1 over their new tenacity of 4, rolling 1 dice, but passing. In the action phase, the British commander noticed a huge mistake. The right flank was completely exposed to the French cavalry. Immediately, he starts barking orders for the brigade of infantry to move into position and start claiming that objective again. The brigade commander immediately orders 2 of the line infantry to form up on the right flank to deny the cavalry that objective. But moving at double speed denied them the chance of forming square at the end. The British messenger gets to the left flank successfully and activates them. The British gun on the left flank is finally able to pivot, but it's too little too late. The British Guard unit moves up and forms square to deny the French Hussars. Next, an activation roll is made for the British Cavalry Brigade and it succeeds. The British immediately play the number 5 card, Stubborn, and remove 1 loss marker from the Heavy Dragoons, and charging the French right flank even though they are in square formation, desperate to wrestle the objective away from them. Next comes the attempt to destroy the French right flank. The British can only attack the French square on a roll of a 6, and it gets it. The British Heavy Dragoons bring all 6 of their attack dice to bear, and all 6 of them hit. Being in square gives the French infantry a +1 melee, plus another for brigade support, but it doesn't matter, it's not going to be able to overcome 6 successful die rolls from the active side. The French infantry routs in panic. The British take losses, but they do not roll for valor since they won the combat. And they initiate a second charge using their headstrong trait into the other French unit. The British have to roll a 6 to engage the square, but this time they fail. The Heavy Dragoons get repealed without harm, but more importantly, they fail to take the objective. The French brigade is forced to take a fortitude test because of the routed unit, and it fails. The French brigade wavers, and the British even the score. Last call for the French, we move to their turn 6. The French pull a card from the fate deck and get 6, Deadly Attack, allowing it to re-roll all missed hits. Next, the French horse artillery on the left flank opens fire on the British square yet again. But this time, it is within 3 centimeters, which counts as canister range, which means the French are able to add 2 more dice on top of their regular 1 attack. Add yet another for shooting against the square, and the result ends up being 2 hits. The British battalion to the left of the cannon is the closest and gets the 2 losses. Time for the French action phase. The French army commander gives the automatic activation to the cavalry brigade on the left flank. They immediately change out of march formation and each unit charges the closest visible target, which is different for both of them. The cuirassiers on the French left use Fate Card 9, which is surprise attack, allowing it to muscle through the rough ground to get into contact with the British battalions that are defending the objective. First, in the French melee phase, we have to test against the square. The French carabiniers attempt to attack the square but get repelled. They retreat without taking a loss but stay close by for brigade support. Next to the French cuirassiers, they are heavy cavalry and get 6 attack dice, adding 1 for brigade support, and they are fresh, so they hit on a 3+, and it's a whopping 5 hits. The British need to stand their ground. They have 4 attack dice, plus 2 in melee support, giving them 6, and then an additional unit in the back giving brigade support for a total of 7 dice. The British roll all 7, but unfortunately only score 3 hits out of them. The British infantry routs, trampled by the French cavalry and giving up their objective. Adding insult to injury, the British brigade rolls for fortitude and fails, basically wavering and giving up yet another point to the French, sealing the battle. The French held on to their objective on their right flank, and they also held on to the objective in the center. And capturing this key objective right here, they score 3 objectives versus the British 1. The final score of the battle is 5 for the French and 2 for the British, giving the French a rousing victory. This was a great battle with a lot of twists and turns, and some results truly surprised me even though I was playing against myself. This demo shows that Valour and Fortitude rules are highly adaptable and can be easily used on an 8mm scale. On the other hand, if you want a more casual experience while traveling, or if you're having a fast game among friends, the travel battle rules are a lot more accessible. I did find that the smaller 8mm scale somewhat crowded with the use of pipe cleaners and lost dice, but as you could see from this battle, it did actually work really well even if a little cramped. In summary, I truly recommend trying the Valour and Fortitude rules with your travel battle set or any other 8mm scale armies that you might have. Thank you for watching. I had a lot of fun making this video and I hope you had fun watching it as well. And I hope you join me for my next one.